welcome everybody. We are getting ready. We're going to start. We've been getting ready to start. Now we're going to start. Just want to begin with this recognition to be grateful for our land in Beverly. And we also acknowledge that the Nalmkeg and Pawtucket peoples on whose ancestral land we are gathering. And this acknowledgement is not making people feel guilty or pointing fingers about shame. Rather, it's really to help us remember the history and the resilience of Indigenous peoples who still live amongst us. And also, it invites us to reflect on what we can do as individuals and as a community to learn about and celebrate Indigenous cultures, to include Indigenous people and perspectives in our discourse and decision-making, and to reflect on our own relationship to the land. So it's really an invitation for further reflection and action. Alrighty, whoops, that did not work. I don't know what I just did there. I do not want to cut out that picture. Okay, there we go. So living room conversations, actually we're 4 years old. We had our very first one right after the election in 2020. And grateful that we have one of our, I would say old timers, but I don't mean it in that way. George has been with us since the beginning. So very, very faithful attender and appreciated that. And I just wanted to say a little bit more too. I mean, obviously this has been an intense week for everybody. I know that, reports say it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, everybody's been feeling a lot of anxiety about the election. And so now there are some people that are happy and some people that are sad, and that would have been the case, whatever had happened. But we're really grateful that you did come out tonight. And I think that, this to repeat a phrase that's been used, right? This is what democracy looks like. There are democratic institutions. Hopefully you all voted. That's one democratic institution, and there are many other ones. But I like to think of this coming together to dialogue as a democratic practice. It's a habit that I think the more we cultivate, the more we can strengthen our democracy and our communities. And I was happy that Maura Healey sort of said those words. I don't know if anybody heard her words after the election, but she said, we have to work across party lines. We have to work across the divide. That's what it means to have a strong community. So I was grateful for her words to that end as well. And so the purpose of these dialogues is really to promote mutual understanding, strengthen communities, not about agreement, not about persuasion, not about arguing, but really, again, gathering together to build trust. So I thank you all for coming out, and I guess maybe just tell one more story in an introduction. I've been working with Elliot, who couldn't be here tonight. I think he's coming back from New Hampshire. He's helped me find some more diverse folks towards the right of the political spectrum, and I really appreciate that. And we had coffee this past week. And as we got up to leave, he put on his Trump Vance hat and he said, "Oh, I bet you don't like this hat, do you?" I said, "No, George, I don't." And he said, "But you respect my right to wear it." I said, "I certainly do." And as I was thinking about it afterwards, I thought what I really should have said is, "No, George, I don't like your hat, but I like you." And so again, I think that's sort of a little anecdote about what we're trying to do here. So thanks for joining in. So before I do the interviews, I just want to go over some of the communication agreements that we come up with in order to create the sort of space that we want to interact in. So in order to promote courageous listening and healing connection, we agree to speak for ourselves, take care not to generalize about others, or to speak or against or on behalf of anyone else. Right, so this is really about telling our own stories rather than telling stories about the other. And then seek to understand and listen with curiosity and resilience. So again, it's about trying to really focus on the human person in front of you rather than a label or assumption that you might have for or about them. Expect the best intentions of the other person and be mindful of the difference between intention and impact. Share airtime, notice who has and has not spoken before speaking a second time. Respect confidentiality, so please take away and share learnings, but leave names. And then we have the option to pass or pass for now, so nobody has to talk or answer questions. Any questions about any of those? They make sense? If they make sense, can we all agree that we will follow them? Okay, thank you. All right, so if our interviewees, Ann and Dawn, want to come up. So very honored to have this pair for our final living room conversations. Kanan Mackenzie DeFranza describes herself as a lifelong educator who's most passionate about building communities through bridging ideas and people. And on my far right is Don McQuarrie, describes himself as a Beverly Townie who loves his community and is a very active leader in several community organizations and on several committees. So thank you so much for your time coming out tonight. So the first question is, share something that you love doing and why you feel it's important to you.
I love doing a lot of things, so I will try to be simplified as much as possible. I love to learn new things. And I love to see others learn new things. That's probably the simplest way I can say what it is I love to do. I'm most passionate about any sort of endeavor that allows us to really celebrate children and childhood and making that as wonderful as possible.
We're doing the microphone, okay. I'm a community guy. I've done a lot of stuff in the community. I'm kind of passionate about that. That's why I've got notes that do so many things. I've been the past chairman. I live in Beverly Farms, but that is not reflective of my net worth by any means. I'm a former banker, and I was on the Republican State Committee in 1980, left to go to Chicago for the Bank of Boston for a year. I was the vice president of West Beach for 40 years. I've been involved with the 4th of July in Beverly Farms since the late 70s, still run the fireworks. A former treasurer of Beverly Historical Society, was a former co-chair of Beverly New Year's. I was a former treasurer of River House. I'm in Rotary in Manchester, Essex, former president. And I helped start the bike race here in Beverly, the Grand Prix of Beverly, the road bike race. So that's kind of my gig, is doing a lot of community stuff. Where's this go?
Thank you both. All right, so talking across difference can be challenging. Could you share a bit about why you've agreed to participate? What do you hope will come out of tonight's dialogue?
I'm here because Elliot Margolis asked me to represent, I guess, right a center viewpoint. But I know her from previous, and she's a sweetheart, and I think she's at times had right of center views as well. So, and I've had left of center views as a part of my life. So,
Thank you. I actually met Don speaking to his Rotary Club. We're fellow Rotarians. I do this because I feel as though in my own life experience, I have seen the need to be flexible in my thinking, and I have seen how assumptions can hurt getting along with other people and learning from other people. And I have so many examples in my own life where really being able to dialogue with other groups has led to healing, understanding, community building in places where you would never think it would happen. And so through that experience, I felt myself being called to look for opportunities to do that. And similar to Don, lots of that through community service, whether it's Rotarian or my service on the school committee, as a professor, you name it, or even just individual efforts to just get to know people and make sure that, the assumptions that we may have about one another doesn't become a barrier to being a good neighbor.
Thank you. So what issue or values motivated you to go out and vote? I'm assuming you did. I'm making an assumption here, but motivated you to get out and vote on Tuesday?
Well, to be honest, no candidate is perfect and no party is perfect. And so I thought about what would we do by not voting? And to simply not have faith in any institutions at all mean that we think everything needs to be perfect in order to participate, which I know is not really the case. And so I know that with our human imperfections, we need to participate to help one another to create the society that we want. And so I thought about that. I was like, well, if you have a vision of society and you don't participate, then in essence, you will take by default whatever comes. And so it felt a little disingenuous to want to have it be the perfect mix of ideas to participate. And that's what compelled me to do that, knowing that many people before me worked really hard for us to have a say in our government. And I thought it would be, certainly not wanting to have their efforts and memory in vain by not doing that, even if I was not completely pleased with all of the policy ideas.
If you haven't guessed, I'm a free enterprise capitalist, and I believe that the factors of production, land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship should be in the private sector. And I get some friends out there, sorry. That kind of motivated me to vote. I was a banker, and a lot of time I did commercial lending for about 30 years in Boston. Then I came out here, worked for a couple smaller banks, community banks. And Jan, get to your meeting, will you? That was a lot of fun. As a banker, especially commercial lender, you're caught in the middle. You've got the customer that wants to do this. You got bank policy over here that you want to adhere to. How do you figure that out and work together? So what motivated me to vote? I hope the capitalism in this country continues for a long, long time. And I look at federal government as really complex these days, and hopefully we can figure a way to slim it down a little bit.
Thank you. In what ways have you as an individual, or have people who share your views, been mischaracterized based on these views, either by people who hold different views or by the media? So how have you felt you've been mischaracterized, or maybe other groups that you belong to been mischaracterized, either by the media or by people who don't hold your views?
He's trying to throw me under the bus. Yeah, come and listen. Well, I belong to so many social groups. If one were to just look at me, they would say, okay, you're a Black woman. I'm also an immigrant to this country, came at the age of 7. So if you know that about me, you may think I have a perspective on that. I'm newer to the area, so there's a perspective of those who lived here for a while versus those who are newer. So there are a lot of different ways that, I've encountered people's assumptions about what I might think about different things. One of the hats that I wear is I'm the president of our North Shore NAACP. And the NAACP, unbeknownst to many people, is a nonpartisan organization. And so there's often assumptions that I'll get an email that says, I want you to join this group or endorse this candidate. And then I have to say, we are nonpartisan. We are interested in policy ideas that further the cause of justice. And so therefore, I can't blanketly support a candidate or party. And that's often a little jarring to people. There have been proposals by both parties that have sometimes really helped people, and then there have been proposals from both parties where maybe it looked like it was going to go in the wrong direction for a vulnerable group. And so that probably has been something that we have been working to, sort of make clearer, but probably could do a better job at doing that, because I do think there are a lot of assumptions about social group and identity and attaching that to this role, where people made the assumption that everything down a specific list of things for a particular party or candidate would be in agreement, but truly we try to maintain that nonpartisanship so that the advocacy efforts can be about policies, irrespective of who's proposing it, if we have a particular concern about that policy being potentially harmful.
Could you repeat the question again?
Yeah, so how have you felt you've been mischaracterized, or maybe other people like you,
Okay,
by either others or by me?
I got it. I grew up in Beverly Farms. I'm supposed to be a rich kid. Right?
Right.
My father died when I was 7. My mother was a bank teller. She worked at Beverly National Bank. We never owned a car. We never owned a home. So what I've done is on my own. But when I go out and tell people where I'm from, oh, you must be a rich guy. I'm not. Whatever I did on my own. And every rung of the ladder is there. And what I feel this country does, it doesn't provide you giveaways, it provides you opportunities. And how you take advantage of those opportunities is up to you. So I've been mischaracterized because of the section of the city I live in. So one of the other issues, well, getting back to another question, was motivating you to vote. The whole energy policy going forward. I was in the Navy, went through officer training in the Navy. We've had a nuclear Navy since 1955. Why we can't explore that type of energy production in the future. They found a way to take care of the waste, and encapsulate it in glass, put it in salt mines so we can figure something else to do with it. So there's a lot of things here.
So what parts of you, or what different beliefs do you hold, might people not expect when they think of someone holding your views? So what's something maybe surprising about either a part of you now or maybe a part of you in the past that people would not expect given the sorts of views that you hold?
I grew up here, had lunch today with 6 guys I went to high school with, and they know everything about me. So there's not a lot of surprise there. But I think it's important to maintain those relationships and understand your community, the citizens within it, and what they think. And, understand what they're saying and don't just dismiss them. I think that's important. Just listen. And I think listening has become a little bit of a lost art. But that's all I got to say.
Thank you. What I think is probably not a huge secret because I have a podcast, so I'm pretty transparent, and I try to live in alignment with my views. One thing that's kind of funny, I think, is that if I were to put all my friends together, I don't know that they would necessarily get along because they're people who I value their time who may not have a lot in common with each other in terms of what they think. Something that's surprising about me, I think, to other people is I'm a professor at a Christian college. And before that, I was in pretty secular spaces at Boston University, at Tufts, American University, like different places where I've taught. And now I'm at Gordon College, which I enjoy very much. So sometimes that's a surprise to people. They'll say, oh my gosh, but you're a social justice advocate and you're at a Christian college. And I'm like, I think Jesus is probably one of the most radical social justice people that ever walked the earth. So I feel right in alignment. But that can be a little confusing. Well, and it doesn't always mean that people will like you in the moment. And that's, I feel like that's not really something that we need to necessarily dictate our behavior, that people may not be in agreement with what it is we're trying to do. But I do try very hard to think about what it is my intention is for something that I'm advocating for. Is it for my own comfort, my own pleasure, for people to like me? Or do I really think it's fair and honest and just? And sometimes that means that, I will need to challenge the way I might be thinking about a thing, or I might need to talk to people who don't seem to agree right offhand just to get their perspective. But certainly that sometimes I find, a surprising thing for people. They're like, oh, like somehow like faith and justice are sort of at odds in the way that people have been talking about it of late. And so hopefully that's not something that they'll continue to think. But it is unfortunate that sometimes that's the way that's come off, in our discourse.
Thanks. So I like what Don said, that listening is a lost art, and I think also the ability to ask really curious questions is also a lost art. So I'm going to ask each of you, what is a question that you have for the other? What's something you want to ask them in a curious way?
Can I get you? Tell me, we've had a very tough political season. How do you overcome that?
Well, now I see why you wanted to go first. Give me the hard question first. Okay. Definitely, I expect that there will be some sore feelings. I was asked how I felt the day of course, like many people were like, how are you feeling? How are you doing? And I gave an honest answer, which is, I'm concerned about the people who do not have the resources and options I do to continue to be comfortable. And so, however this impacts other people who feel vulnerable or afraid, I'm concerned for that. And so my thought immediately went to, is there anything that people think is happening that's not happening? Is there anything that people misunderstand? What is it that students are thinking about or neighbors are thinking about? But, we had signs in our community, and I did not let that stop me from saying hello to who I normally say hello to. I think that if you talk to people long enough, they have reasons for why they voted the way they did. But I think that the only way to come together again as neighbors is sometimes to get to the root of the differences of opinion. And certainly, I don't think it benefits any of us to share how, fill in the blank, disgusted, angry, mad we are at our neighbors, etc. Especially if we're posting it and naming people and bickering amongst ourselves, because we still live in the same community. Things like this, I chose to participate in because I know that with emotions being raw, that the immediate reaction may be to talk about all the people who didn't vote the way we wanted or who we're upset with. But I really feel as though local behavior is going to be what makes the difference in how this moves forward. What we choose to do with our immediate neighbor, what we choose to do when we go back to work, how we choose to talk about the quote other side, and how we humanize one another irrespective of those positions is going to be important. So we might have heard some fiery words during the elections from the candidates because their job is to help you make a decision, to help you really feel strongly about whoever they are. But we have to understand that that is a political strategy. That is not the way to live amongst ourselves, to call groups of people by certain terms and like label and box them there forever. They are indeed our neighbors. And so for me, it's making sure that we are distinguishing ourselves from what a political strategist may want to do and what people may say versus the ways in which we want to engage every day with our neighbors who live next door, who we're going to have our children go to school with, and who we're going to need to make local decisions with about how we live every day, so that whatever's happening globally, the way it impacts us locally, we have a plan and we can be collective in however that plan moves forward.
I've often found that if you have differences, if you start talking about them, they're often resolved. And what bothers me is the all or nothing attitude I see in some individuals. And what you need to do is discuss it with them and see if there can be common ground there. Life is shades of gray, and that's where we live. As a banker, as I mentioned earlier, I'd often have a customer who his idea of getting a loan is different than mine or the federal government's. And there's been a number of occasions where I've been in a loan workout where the company's cash flow has dried up, their collateral has been diminished, and their personal net worth has decreased. And they're looking for money, and how do you explain that to them? Well, very carefully. But I think if you eventually you do find common ground, and they'll often say, I can see you thinking. So to me, it's the all or nothing people, and keep probing till you find common ground.
I think it's my turn to ask a question. So this is something that I genuinely am curious about. I think we fluctuate socially in how much we want the government to intervene in our lives or not. So whether it was during COVID, we were arguing about how much the government should have a right to say about what we did. or it could be just locally, how we fund things, et cetera. And I'm wondering if you have any sort of formula you think about, like when would it make sense for government intervention, and when do you think it should be left to the individuals or communities to make decisions, so that, to your point, if we have opportunities, how can we make sure those opportunities are open to those who want them? And with that discussion of like, what's the right balance?
I'm an only child, and my dad died when I was 7, as I mentioned before. My mother was a bank teller at Beverly National Bank, a loan teller, and she was getting money from me till I was 22, like a couple $100 a month, and it made all the difference in the world for us growing up. So I think there are situations like that out there where the government plays a very prominent role and necessary role. So without getting into the migrant stuff and everything there, but I think there are roles for government anywhere. I mean, healthcare, everything of that nature. When does the government step in to help someone that needs help? If you can't do it on your own, I think looking towards the government's a pretty good option. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for modeling some really great questions and responses.